Welcome to the Confidence in Singing podcast, where you can reclaim your voice and rediscover the joy of singing. I'm Aideen, and my guests include singers and voice experts who share their insights and journey to encourage singing for health, happiness, and fun. To support this podcast and join the Confidence in Singing community, just click on the Patreon link below. Welcome everyone to the Confidence in Singing podcast. I'm here today with Eyvindur Karlsson. Welcome, Eyvindur.
Thank you.
Let me tell you all a little bit about Eyvindur. He's such an interesting guest, and we recently got acquainted. And Eyvindur is an Icelandic singer-songwriter, theatre professional and author. He teaches songwriting to serious musicians who want to improve their skills and write better songs. Eyvindur writes Americana folk music in the vein of Tom Waits and Nick Cave, and he likes to tell sad stories mixed with a good dose of humour. He has published a crime novel in Icelandic, written songs for award-winning musicals, travelled around the world with his theatre projects, and has worked on TV and radio series. He lives in Iceland with his wife and 2 sons. Welcome, Eyvindur.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm looking forward to talking with you about songwriting, about singing, about confidence, and a little bit about your journey. This interesting, path you've taken with your music and all the different ways that you're expressing yourself creatively. Tell us a little bit about your story. Where does it begin?
Well, I was born at an early age. And my parents are theater professionals too. They're actors, directors. My dad is a playwright. So I never had a chance really. And I can't really decide what I want to be when I grow up. So I tend to just do a little bit of everything. And for the longest time, it was something that I was trying to avoid. I wanted to try to pick one thing because I kept thinking I'll never be very good at anything because I keep, running back and forth between different things. But in recent years, and I'm a late bloomer in this, I've been kind of realizing that actually this is the best way for me to function is to not, because if I stay on one thing, like completely focused on one thing for too long, I get depressed and I can't do it. So I've found that the best way for me to function as an artist is to do a little bit of everything. So I'm a director, I am an actor. Music has certainly been my number one passion, I think, throughout the years. That's been the one constant. I never seem to get very far away from music. Whereas I might write for a few months and then I'll just kind of put that aside and move on to something else. And theater, by the nature of it, tends to be in short bursts here and there, or not so short, but it comes and goes. Whereas music is kind of always there for me.
When did it start?
But, yes, I wrote this novel. It was released in 2007. And I've written some more. I think there's an airplane flying over my house.
I can't really hear it. Don't worry.
Okay, good, because I can. But yeah, so that was in 2007. I've written a couple more, but they haven't been, I haven't released them yet. And so, I kind of tend to go back and forth between all of these different things. And that's, I think, I'm first and foremost, I'm a storyteller and my music tells stories and I like to tell stories in different formats. And I think it's sort of become where, I have this idea and, hey, is this story best told through music or is it best told through fiction, or is it best told through? I'm getting fascinated with visual arts, which is something that I've never been good at, and now I kind of want to do that. I really want to learn to express myself visually as well. So I'm just, I guess, as long as it's creative, it's right for me.
You're multi-talented, multi-passionate. And I think a lot of creative people will identify with what you're saying. Certainly, I know my husband, Mike, he wants to be really good at just one thing, but he happens to be passionate about many things and really good at many things. So you've got to work what you've got. And I'm definitely one for following my instincts. So I have no problem with that. Keep going with the many, many things. Why not?
Yeah, someone told me that this is an actual thing. Just recently, someone said, "Oh, you're a multi-potentialite," which was a word that I had never heard before. And there have been books written on this, and apparently this is just a personality trait, and I'm not abnormal. There are a lot of people who are like this, so that was a relief.
That's good. That's good. So, where did you get the confidence to start putting your creativity out there?
It was hard fought. I mean, it was not easy. I've never been a very confident person, really. And especially when it comes to singing, I think that's because I've always been creative and I've always loved creating art, whatever it might be. It's kind of magical to me still. Even now, I'm 40 years old, and I've been doing this pretty much since I was born. Which I guess we all children are creative, and then society kind of kills it in many of us, sadly. But it's still so magical to me that we as humans are able to create something that didn't exist before. I never stop being amazed and this sounds kind of egotistical, but when I listen to the songs that I've written, or when I sing them, or read something that I wrote or whatever, it feels amazing to me that didn't exist before I put it there. And that, I'm not a religious person or a spiritual person really, but that to me that's my spirituality, is creativity. That's when people talk about a spiritual experience, that to me is, the way I connect with that is thinking about creativity and those experiences that I've had. That was a little bit of a tangent. Sorry.
No, it's beautiful.
So for me, it didn't used to be about putting things out there really, and I was always afraid of that. It was just about the experience of creating something. And when I first started writing songs, and originally I wrote instrumental things, electronic things, and then I started writing more songs in the sense that something that you sing, and I never had the confidence to perform them because I didn't feel like I could sing. It was not a skill that I felt I had. And then I think it was, like you said, I've been inspired by Tom Waits and Nick Cave, Leonard Cohen, Neil Young, those sorts of artists, and Bob Dylan, who are not famous for having the sort of classically beautiful voices. Mm-hmm. Or even in some cases are known for not singing very well. And that, I think, listening to those artists and hearing those, in many cases, grating sounds and those imperfect performances, if you will, it sort of allowed me to get the confidence to go up on stage and try it out. And initially, I just went on stage and imitated Tom Waits. That was what allowed me to get over my stage fright. Was I'm just going to go and I'm gonna imitate Tom Waits. I was singing an original song, but I sang it like Tom Waits. I just put on that growl and I just did it. And it allowed me to get, and for probably about a year after that, that was what I did. I'd go on stage and just imitate Tom Waits. And later I found a quote by Tom Waits where he said, all artists are imitating someone and doing a bad job. And that's how you find your voice. So that was how I initially got over my stage fright, my fear of singing in public. And it took me a while to get over that. And it took me even longer to consider myself a decent singer. And I still don't think I'm, I think my voice is okay. But technically, I'm not a great singer, and I realize this. But I think confidence, in a way, at least for me, comes from being aware of my limitations. So I kind of know what I need to do to be able to, I need a lot of practice. I'm not a singer who can, I can't sing from sheet music, first of all. I can read sheet music, but I can't, I need to like play it on a piano or something before I can sing it. I can't sight read. But I need a lot of rehearsal in order to feel confident in what I'm doing. So that's what I do. I work very hard to be able to gain that confidence, to be able to sing. And
I like it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I do it.
Yeah, I
it's
think
just hard work.
It is, but anything worthwhile, if you put a bit of hard work behind it, tends to have that better quality. And I think a lot of artists, like, we go to gigs sometimes and the first 2 or 3 songs are really, they're like the warm-up songs, and so I sometimes wonder if, musicians are rehearsing enough. So I like that you err on the side of more rehearsing rather than less rehearsing.
Yeah, I do. And I think everything comes down to work and to practice and experience. And that's kind of the, because I coach songwriters, and it's the same with songwriting as with singing and everything else. The more you do it, the better you get. Mm-hmm. And the longer between, if you take a long break from whatever it is, then it's going to be painful. It's the same as physical exercise, same as anything. You need to do it, otherwise you're going to pull a muscle, and that's what the voice is. It's muscles, and the same with the muscles in the brain that you use to create, and then of course it follows that if you've been doing it, like now I've been doing it for 20 years. I've been singing in public for 20 years. I've been writing music somewhat consistently, and, semi-professionally or professionally for 20 years. Mm-hmm. So now I don't need to work as hard. My rehearsals take a lot shorter because I've done a lot of hard work before. So it's not like, yes, now I can pick up a song and I can, if it's a cover song, or if I'm, working on one of my new songs or whatever, it might take me an hour or two to get it to a place that would have taken me 12 hours, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's what you get from working hard on whatever your skill set is, whether that's singing or playing an instrument. Singing is playing an instrument in a way, I guess. But, whatever your instrument is, or whatever your talent or your skill is, the more years you've spent working on it, the faster you can do it. And that's why, that for anybody who is, a professional at anything, that's why you don't charge for your time. You charge for the years you've spent getting to the place where you are now, because yes, I can spend 30 minutes to do something and I'll charge you for a lot more because it would have taken somebody with less experience,
A lot
week.
longer. Yes, exactly. That's so interesting. And yeah, I think a lot of us struggle to see the value of our experience in that way.
Yeah.
And it's really important to know, to be able to see where you're truly at. And sometimes that's where a coach, like a singing teacher, can come in and let you know kind of what it is or you need to do to get to the next stage. Are you putting enough time in? Are you practicing in a way that actually is going to make a big difference to your voice? Or are you just kind of doing something that's a bare minimum? And I get frustrated too sometimes with students that I feel have a lot of potential and I don't see them, putting the right type of practice in or getting, even like I'd want them to come for a few more lessons or something. And I'd be like, oh, I wish they just would, because I feel they're on that cusp of, making a big breakthrough. But often people don't you don't know what you don't know. And that's why having someone with a bit of expertise to look at where you're at clearly is a huge benefit. Tell us a little bit about the coaching that you do for songwriters, because I know one of the reasons you got in touch with me was because of a podcast I did with David Drake, who's a LA-based singer-songwriter. Why was it that you got in touch? Why was it that you were so impressed with that podcast episode?
Yeah, I thought it was so great because one of the things that David talked about was like consistency and, like we were just talking about, just showing up and doing the work and, and approaching it professionally. And what I mean by that is like in a professional manner, not treating it like something ethereal that, you just sit around and wait for the gods to smile upon you and hand you this thing. And that's been a big part of my, what I teach to my clients. And it's just, it's helped me so much in my career to realize this. Like I said, I work in theater a lot, and I've written music for quite a few theater productions and musicals. And I realized extremely quickly, and it was kind of a rude awakening when I got my first job like that you can't just sit around and wait for something to happen. You need to go out and make it happen. You need to sit down and do the work. And sitting around waiting for inspiration, that doesn't work. You need to figure out methods to go and find material to work from. So it resonated with me what David was talking about just sit down, and this is job like any other job. It reminds me of this story that Jerry Seinfeld told, where he was sitting in a coffee shop or something in New York, and he was just beginning to make it as a comedian, and he was looking across the street at a construction site, and there were these guys in hard hats going around with their tools and doing their thing, and they just showed up at a certain hour, and then they worked all day, and then they left, and they were building this house. And so Jerry thought, that's, those guys they get paid a lot less than me, and their job is probably not as fun as my job is. And they show up at a certain time and they stay until the work is done. And so that's what I need to do. And so from that moment on, he just set a schedule where he would show up to work at a certain time. He would write jokes, and then, he wouldn't stop until that whatever time he had decided was up. And I think this is so important for artists, whatever kind of artists they might be, whether painters or singers, songwriters, guitarists, writers, whatever. If you just show up when you feel like it, that's not a good basis for a career. Mm-hmm. So if you are serious about whatever your art form is, you need to be serious about showing up for work. And
that's great advice.
So I mean, it's just, there is no way, I think, to have anything more than a hobby unless you show up every day. And, and that means showing up when you really don't feel like it, when you just want to, stay in bed or whatever the case may be. It's, you need to be a hard boss if you're your own boss.
Definitely. But one of the biggest issues, I think, for me with singers, and I feel it myself for my own songwriting, it's this identity part. So if I don't see myself, say if someone doesn't see themselves as a writer, they're like, oh, I'd love to be a writer. I don't know if I can. Da, 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 da. If you don't own that identity and say, I am, and even starting with, I'm an aspiring writer, or I am, part-time writer, or whatever it is, but to own that sense and that portion of identity around that thing that you want to do, and from claiming that as yours to whatever portion it can be, that gives you the foundation for creating those structures and those habits and things that we need to actually be a success at that thing.
Yes, and I'm a big believer in affirmations and positive self-talk. And there's an exercise that I do with my clients that I'd love to just share.
We'd love
here,
that.
if I may. This is something that I picked up years and years ago, and I didn't come up with this at all, but it's really powerful, and I use it a lot for myself and for the people I work with. So it's a like a mind exercise, and anybody listening should just do this now. just grab a piece of paper and a pen, and just pause the conversation and just go grab a piece of paper and a pen. And so what you're going to do is you should close your eyes and picture where you want to be. Like, where's the end of your, like, not the end, but like, where's the ultimate destination in your journey as an artist? Where do you want to be if you could be like really selfish and just make all of your artistic dreams come true? What would that look like? And just really picture this, just in every detail. Like, if you're a singer, if you're a classical singer, do you want to be singing at the Met in New York, or if you're a pop singer, do you want to be selling out stadiums as a performer, or whatever it is? Just go nuts, dream big, think of the ultimate, where you could, like, the furthest you can possibly imagine going, and make it as big, make it too big, make it something that you could never believe that you could accomplish. So just go there, think about it, and envision it. And then when you have that image in your head, a really clear image of what that looks like and what it feels like, then I want you to think about and write down what people say about you. So do they say she has the most amazing voice? Or if you're a songwriter, do they say, oh, they write the most profound lyrics I've ever heard? Or whatever the case may be. Just imagine in your wildest dreams, when you've accomplished everything you could ever hope to accomplish, what do you want people to say about you? And write down as many as you can. And so once that's done, and you should pause now and just do this. So once you've written those down, preferably, 5 to 10, take all of those and turn them into first-person positive affirmations. So if it was, she has such a beautiful voice, then write down, I have a beautiful voice. And if it's, they write such beautiful lyrics, then I write deep and profound lyrics. You get the idea. Mm-hmm. Take all of those things and turn them into positive affirmations. And then take all of those you should have quite a few positive affirmations by now, if you've been following along. You should take all of those and you should write them down on like a nice piece of paper, or maybe you can go to canva.com or somewhere on the internet, or or Photoshop or whatever you have access to, and set them up in a nice kind of way where you can print them out and make them look nice, or whatever you have access to, and wherever your skill. I mean, if you're really good at calligraphy, do that, or whatever, and then hang them up in your creative space. So, I always recommend that artists have their little creative space. It might just be a corner of the living room, or it might be a chair or whatever, but just it's just always better if you can have the same space where you do your creative work every day, and just have it there so that it's in front of you when you're in a creative mode. So that's my exercise. That is, I think, a really good, if you look at this all the time and internalize it, it is amazing what it does for your confidence.
That's a wonderful exercise. So I would love all of our listeners to come back and let us know how they do with the exercise. It's something that I definitely do myself, and I use affirmations as questions as well. So I also would move, say, from I have a good voice to why do I have such a good voice? Why is it easy for me to have a good voice? And then it kind of creates a little bit of problem solving within me, where that's something that I'll start working on. I'll start doing my warm-ups more and things like that. So we've got so much, our brains are just wired to go one direction. They get a neural pathway. It's like it's set that way. And if someone has told you you're not good at something, or it's hard to make money in music, which was what my dad used to say, it gets set in your brain so strongly that it's very difficult then to take any action towards your creative goals. And it's so important that each of us take responsibility to change those and know that it definitely is possible to change it. I work for myself in the music world, despite the fact that I was told that it wasn't possible. And it's amazing. It's actually, I surprise myself every day. And I'm sure you surprise yourself too, Eyvindur, with all of the things that you've accomplished with your music and your creativity.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I love that you brought up those neural pathways and all of that, because it's remarkable what happens in our brains. Like it's the same with addiction and with habits and all these kinds of things. There are grooves in the brain, and so it's very easy to default to the same negative self-talk and all of those, limiting beliefs and everything, because they're like physical grooves in our brains. Mm-hmm. But we can change them. And this is one of the ways, is by just doing those positive affirmations, having mantras that we repeat to ourselves, and also just doing it, and like for me, 20 years ago, you could never have convinced me that I could ever have been a singer. It just wasn't a thing. There was no way. Now, 20 years later, that's, I've changed those pathways in my brain. And so, it's remarkable what we can accomplish if we just set a course and stick to it and just retrain our brains. But the thing is, of course, it takes a lot more positive affirmations than it takes negative feedback. So those limiting beliefs that we've heard 1,000 times, we need 1,000,000 positive things to offset that.
That's so true. And it can take a few years for things to start to make sense as well. And
absolutely,
it takes a bit of staying power.
Again, hard work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if it's something that you're enjoying, I think a lot of people are doing a lot of hard work in lots of areas of life that maybe they don't really want to be putting that hard work in. Choose to put the hard work in where you're going to be rewarded for that. And I think creativity is an amazing reward in itself.
Yeah, and that's one of the things also that I spend a lot of time on with my clients, is to just figure out, even just in the realm of songwriting or as a musician or whatever, where should you be concentrating your energy? Because we only have a finite amount. We only have a finite amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so making sure when you're setting goals and setting that course, making sure that it's in alignment with your current situation in life and your values and all of those things is so important. Because otherwise, and I that's happened to me certainly, and you might have experienced the same, where I have spent months of my life spinning my wheels trying to do something, even though it is in a creative field, it still wasn't the right thing for me. And I realized that after, I'm not going to say wasting time, because I don't believe that you can waste time, because you're always learning something, you're always growing as a person. But I probably could have made more headway and towards where I want to go if I had prioritized differently.
Yeah, I agree. It's so important to choose. And it's interesting, I was actually writing a post there today, and I'm promoting a new event, which is the Voice and Song Summit. And that all came about because I trusted my intuition and my instincts, and started to feel when I was happy. I think, it's almost like, can you feel in your body when you're happy? Are you allowing yourself to choose things that make you happy? Because a lot of people tend to be a little bit hard on themselves or a bit too frugal about things sometimes. When you start to notice, what I want to wear today is this thing. The way kids do sometimes, they're like, no, my nephew was like, when he was 3 or 4 years old, was able to say, those shoes are my style. And his mother was like, oh, really? So we have our own instincts, but we stop following them. We stop trusting them. And by trusting myself a little more and following my instinct a little more, I've managed to create this Voice and Song Summit happening mid-May. If any of you are interested this is May 2022, actually, in case you're listening to the podcast in the future sometime. But
yes,
it's actually been an amazing journey to start to trust myself. And it began actually with simple things like, creating my workspace, making my workspace look nice. Just making choices that are based on what you truly want instead of what you think you should want or what other people would think is the best plan.
Are you familiar with The Artist's Way?
I have heard of it and I know of it, but I've never actually done that. It's a book, right?
Yes, that's pretty much, a lot of what we've been talking about is like what it is. That's, it's about allowing yourself to be an artist and not to be ashamed of that, because society wants us to feel ashamed for being artists. And one of the big things that I do to this, that I try to do every day, I don't, but I try, is one of the main things from that book is to write morning pages. Mm-hmm. In fact, this is my morning. This is what it is.
Beautiful. So if you're listening to the podcast, we're looking at Julia Cameron's book.
Yeah. This is actually not the book. This is the morning pages journal.
A journal. Okay.
That's
the physical proof now that Eyvindur is doing his morning pages.
Yeah. So you write 3 pages longhand every morning. As soon as, like, the minute you get up. I meditate and then I do this, and it sets me up beautifully for the day. And I think what you're saying about intuition, I feel like I'm more in touch with my intuition when I do this, because it's basically just stream of consciousness. You're not writing about anything in particular. So whenever I'm like my brain is having problem processing something, this is fantastic to just, just why am I thinking? Because the whole point is trying to stop as little as possible, not to like stare into space and try to think of something to write, but just writing. So a lot of things come out of like, well, what do I want to do about why am I thinking about this? And it really helps. And it's great to just give yourself permission to be a creative. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier about spirituality. That book is a lot about spirituality. And that's kind of where going through that book was when I realized, oh, creativity is that's my spiritual side, That's when I think the reason is because, spirituality is about, it's kind of, there are things that you don't understand. I think that's I guess there are many different definitions, but to me, it's like, okay, so things I don't understand and things that are beyond my power. And, for some people, that's a deity of some kind. For me, it's just the creative force because I don't understand how it works. I don't understand how we are able to do this. So that's kind of, that's like my
very deep
extra meditation is getting in touch with it through those morning pages.
That's awesome. So before we start to wind things up a little bit, I would love for you to let the audience know more about where they can find your music and your other creative projects. I know that your crime novel is still only available in Icelandic, so
yes,
we'll be waiting for that now.
Yeah. It's coming. Watch this space. So if you want to check out my music and things like that, and that's probably where I'll end up, because I do want to start getting more into writing, and since I'm embracing my multi-passionate side, I'm just going to put music, any kind of art, I'm just going to put it in the same place. So because my name is tricky, the easiest way to get there is to go to a website, which is onebadday.is. So not many bad days, just one of them.
Is that the number one or OW?
No, it's all written out phonetically.
Yeah.
onebadday.is, which is the Icelandic domain extension. If you're interested in, if people are songwriters or want to be songwriters out there, then my songwriting website is strongwriting.net. And there I have a podcast on songwriting. And I also have a thing, there's a quiz there that's going to pop up on the front page where you can answer a few questions. And it's going to point out the area you should focus on as a songwriter. So it works whether you're a veteran or a beginner. And a lot of people I find have sort of blind spots as to what might be holding them back, especially experienced songwriters, I find. Because it's, we've been doing this a long time. I think this is probably true for any artist. It's easy to not see the forest for the trees, and so you're doing good and you're writing good stuff, but there might be one or two things that are keeping you from progressing to the next level. So I developed this quiz on the site where you can just get an opinion on sort of what it is, and then I offer free consultations for if people are interested in that, and a lot of different things on there. So that's something that I think is useful.
Perfect. I'm sure it is useful. I'm sure it is. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you join us today on the Confidence in Singing podcast.
Oh, wow, time has flown, hasn't it?
It really has. But was there anything that you still wanted to say to the listeners before we wind up?
Just make music. Just do it. Step out of your comfort zone anytime you can. That's my biggest tip for anybody trying to build confidence in any field, is if something scares you, it's probably worth doing, because it's going to make you, because failure is always going to build you up. And there's no scenario where an artist is going to, unless they're doing something incredibly dangerous, you're probably not going to die if you fail. And as long as you don't die from the failure that might result from whatever it is you're doing outside of your comfort zone, it's going to be worth doing because you're going to learn from it. And chances are you might not fail, and then it's going to be fantastic. So I firmly believe that music makes the world a better place. So anytime you're out there making music, you're providing a vital service, and just keep doing it.
That's really wonderful. Thank you so much, Eyvindur, for joining us here. And thank you
so much for having me.
You're so welcome. And thanks to all the listeners for listening in. Please let us know how the exercise goes for you. And if you check out The Artist's Way, both of us would love to hear from you. And definitely check out Eyvindur's website, onebadday.is and strongsongwriting.net.
Strongwriting.
Songwriting. Okay, songwriting.
A little play on words.
Net. Perfect. Those links will be in the show notes as well for anybody listening. We look forward to having you listening again to the next Confidence in Singing podcast. Thank you and goodbye.